Hi, I'm Lawrence.
And I'm Karen Tam, and we are the co-hosts of Inside the Champion's Mind.
I'm super excited.
Are we going shopping?
No, not really. We are going to be in Melbourne, though.
For shopping?
No, we're not going to be shopping. We're going to be at the Wellness Summit, September 10th and 11th at the Melbourne Convention Centre.
That's pretty exciting.
It is exciting because it's your first time going to be there.
It is.
And along with a whole bunch of other people, too. But even though, whether they're your first time or your second time or third time, you definitely want to come out because it's the last time we're going to do it in Melbourne.
That's awesome. So you can still register.
You can still register.
Get in.
There's also going to be myself, Damien, Brett, and along with Up for the Chat Girls, Marcus Pierce, Joe Whitten, Kale Brock, Steph Lowe, the Mary Make Sister, and Tim Robards.
So to register, can they save any money?
Yes, they can.
And I like saving money.
Yes, so you can go shopping.
Go shopping. There we go. So to register and receive $100 off your ticket, go to thewellnesssummit.com and enter the code FIRSTSUMMIT16.
That's FIRSTSUMMIT16. Go to thewellnesssummit.com. We'll see you there.
Shopping.
TheWellnessCouch.com. Streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. Today we're actually going to dive into intimacy after childbirth, or certainly moving into the mother archetype and space, which is perfect because we have Bridget here with her newborn 2-week-old little Sylvie.
Yes, we've got a special guest, so if you hear some little squeaks and some sort of little snorts and all that kind of stuff, then that's what it is. It's Sylvie.
There we go.
Yeah.
Hi, Sylvie.
So we're going to dive into this one with a question that came through on Facebook.
Yeah, we got a private message, which is fabulous. We love these questions because it really helps us direct what awakening and topics you would like us to delve into and start, opening up within your life, knowing that whoever is listening will also be getting benefit out of that question. We're completely happy to keep those anonymous. So we had a beautiful woman write into us, and I'm just going to read her email to you, or her Facebook message. She says this: I'm struggling a bit as a new mum, the postpartum phase and your relationship with your body and yoni after birth. I had an amazing birth and put in a lot of effort in attaining the birth I really hoped for, and felt so connected to my body and feminine during pregnancy and the birth, to coming out the other side feeling like A, my body no longer belongs solely to me. B, I don't recognise my body anymore. C, really confused as how literally in the space of a few hours I went from being so connected with my body to so disconnected. My yoni and reproductive organs have always been where I have had issues health-wise, and it makes me wonder what I am harbouring or clinging to that contributes to manifesting my physical conditions. So we loved that because that was such a beautiful, deep, thought-out question, really. Like, it was gorgeous. Amazing vulnerability, amazing courage, even just in connecting with us and writing that.
Yeah, and it really rung true, certainly in our perception of in some ways a universal challenge that so many women travel around. Who am I? Not just who am I in myself after babies, but who am I in my sexuality? That was like milk drunk. And, it's really big stuff. And I think we don't often give enough voice to that. So many women kind of suffer in that alone, and and their relationships suffer in that first year too, because, you wonder, how do I get back in my body? How do I feel sexual again? How do I, and particularly with all the hormones that are going on at the same time, how can I make myself want to? Because for so many women, they don't even want to go there. So, yeah, we're going to pull this one apart and really try and get to the bottom of those feelings. And, pregnancy is a time for some women where they are deeply, deeply connected to their feminine. It's that you can't miss it, outward expression of femininity. And
you can't escape it either, which is the interesting part, right? So this is why the feminine is so elusive and why we can feel so disconnected from our feminine in our day-to-day life, because we largely run in the masculine. There's jobs to do, businesses to run, offices to function, households to function, and we have to put on our very productive, organised, angular, selves. But there's no softness and roundness and pleasure in the form of the feminine.
Because when you're so busy compartmentalizing your life and ticking things off, there's no room for softness and flow.
So pregnancy, though, is interesting, right? Because if you have, in essence, always had a disconnection from that softness and roundness to the feminine, you can be really in pregnancy unable to escape the feminine in a physical, spiritual, and emotional way, like you have always been able to escape it before.
Yeah.
But in pregnancy right now, you literally are caged in it in a way.
Because, it's very easy to be out of your body in general life, whereas pregnancy pulls you in like nothing else. Whether it's the tests you might always be having to have, whether it's the baby kicking, whether it's your concerns, there's always something that's pulling you inward.
And your physical form. Every time you see your body, every time you touch your body, you are feeling roundness, you are feeling softness and relaxation within your body as those ligaments soften and ready for birth, as that pelvis moves and that body moves and those breasts grow. If you've found ways to escape that deep feminine roundness in your life previously, pregnancy can feel like this incredible earth-shattering connection to what the feminine can be.
Which by that point can also be why for many women it's very challenging. If you've run from that.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's also why, which you and I were just talking about before we started recording, it can almost create a fantasy.
Yeah.
Because we don't have to do the super deep hard work that we do the rest of our out of this embodiment of the feminine phase in pregnancy, because we're held in it.
Yeah.
So we can perceive that we are now this ultimate embodiment of the feminine, and when we no longer are, in essence, captivated by that and this birth happens, we can feel an enormous loss because now real life functions and we actually have to do the work to connect with what was previously effortless because we were captivated in it.
We were held in it, whereas, immediately in the postnatal phase, you're very, often distanced from it, or potentially you are challenged by what's happening, whether, because you've got postpartum bleeding, you've got, all of those, after birth pains, whatever else it is that's going on for you, recovering from birth, all of a sudden this sort of sacred vessel that you've honoured and revered, particularly in this woman's case, is now something that you almost don't know anymore. That has been through so much, and so at the same time you're trying to reconnect to that and the new form that your body is almost representing for you, as well as caring for a baby, and the enormous, growth and challenge that comes with that, particularly for first-time mothers, where nothing can quite prepare you, So, yeah, and you touched on that idea of it being a fantasy, and I do wonder with this particular woman whether there was a lot of embodiment of that concept of the sacred pregnancy and the divine feminine in that role of becoming a mother. And particularly, she highlighted that she had a great birth, and sometimes the drawbacks to those incredible experiences are that the come down can sometimes be a little bit more brutal after you've had such elation and rapture in, and everything's kind of gone to plan for you. The crash can sometimes come in the postnatal phase, which is, often a phase that many women don't prepare that well for, because they often kind of can't. They feel like they can't prepare for it. How do you prepare for life, as it completely changing? What does that look like? So I certainly know that I couldn't think beyond the birth of my son. I didn't know what life was going to be like or how I could mold life to the way I wanted it, because I almost felt like I had this child now and they would decide, so you can plan your pregnancy, you can plan your birth, but for many women, the postnatal phase is just like, just roll with it, and that can be challenging too. So I think it's twofold really, the question of what we're really looking at, bless you, is the connection to your body and how that shifts and changes, and also how do you rekindle intimacy, in a relationship, in a dynamic where there's now 3 or, however many more people are in your family as a result of this pregnancy, and how do you connect to your body enough to then want to share that?
Yeah, big questions. What I'm interested in first, Bridget, is obviously you're in this phase right now, which is, I think, easier to connect with than myself when I'm kind of dipping back into memory,
Yeah.
which can be totally falsified, right?
Yeah.
So how do you feel about your body now after birth?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And I really identify with this idea of being out of your body because you're so much giving, like when you're demand feeding, when you're kind of not getting snatches of sleep, you're not often in your body. So I really use my shower at night, which is when my husband, holds Sylvie and plays with her and stuff like that. I use my half an hour shower to really connect back into my body every day because I can sense that I'm often not really in it. And that's a beautiful experience.
What does that mean for you when you say you can sense when you're not in your body? What does that mean?
I can just feel, I think I just feel like I'm not grounded in it, and I'm not, it's a tricky one to kind of explain, I guess, because it's always someone else's, so I'm always giving parts of it, so I'm always, whether I'm feeding her or, thinking about her next need. It's similar to that masculine approach to, doing, right? And I think that's when often you're kind of in a state of flightiness sometimes. So even though I've had quite a relaxing, early postpartum phase, for me, being in my body or grounding myself in my body often means that I need to just be just me with my body, and touch it and observe it. And for me, a lot of that has been, looking at what my belly looks like now and some gratitude for what it's given me and some, feeling of how it's changing and how it has changed as a result of birth. And, just even that practice of, lathering my body in soap or, using oil after the shower. Those simple kind of essential things have been really pivotal for me in a time when it's very easy, particularly I think for new mothers, to give so much of yourself beyond what's almost reasonable, to kind of give everything and put yourself last. I really learned from my first pregnancy that that's not helpful for anybody when you're every single, hint of a whimper, you drop everything that's you and give wholeheartedly. I think, also need to know, okay, I'm going to go to the toilet now, or I'm going to, yes, my baby's crying, but they've just been fed. My husband's fine to hold them. I'm going to take time out now for myself to have a shower or whatever that is. And I think that the anxiety that so many new mothers experience means they often won't even give themselves permission to do those things. And when you don't give yourself permission to do those things, you're almost dishonouring your body and yourself in that process. You're almost saying, you're second, you don't matter. It's that whole concept of, putting the oxygen mask on yourself first, which I just don't think new mothers really do very well. I think it's always the baby, the baby, the baby. But the baby suffers when you suffer. So yeah, coming back to the in your body stuff, certainly for the last 2 weeks, that's really been my focus, has been the shower.
So are there areas of your body that you would either dip into now or previously would have harshly critiqued post-birth?
No. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because I've done a lot of work on myself in the past around my body, because I have the unusual challenge. I had the unusual challenge growing up of being too skinny and being unwomanly. And so that was why for me, my first pregnancy was when I felt most like a woman. And
because
I felt
you had curves.
I had curves and I never had.
Before.
And part of my work on myself to regain my fertility this time round was to see that I was no more fertile pregnant, which was my perception, that, my pregnancy was when I was most fertile. But that was just the idea that I was latching on to justify that was most womanly, was to be pregnant. Which I also wonder is if that's a little bit of what's coming up in the case of this question. But no, I think I have reverence for my body after pregnancy. I can look at my belly and I can see all the stretch marks and I can see how my belly button will never ever be the same again. But I have immense gratitude for that. So
how have you done that though? Because I would imagine that's an enormous leap for some women who may be listening, is they would love to get to that point where, those wounds and scars and imperfections are met with gratitude for and reverence for what your body has done and given you.
I think potentially it's in the struggle of getting in achieving these pregnancies, potentially, that gives you that. So my acupuncturist was saying that it's awful. It's so awful. She went to this laser clinic to have some laser done on her bikini line, and, you know, this very untactful sales girl went into this clearly scripted, you know, approach with her saying, oh, you know, you really should think about getting those stretch marks looked at, because, you know, the sooner you get onto them, the better. And, like, you know, you just feel so much better once you've had them, you know, lasered. Like, just totally putting words in her mouth. And how horrific. And she didn't really hold back. And she said, look, these are 12 years old. I love them. You know, do you not realise how insulting that could be? There's some women who would kill to have these stretch marks, because these stretch marks represent having children, and there's some women who can't do that. You know, and so I think for me, I think about that, you know, that aspect of it, and whenever I get, you know, a bit, well, I don't even know that I get really flat about it, because I think this is what it means to be a woman. This is what it means to be a mother. Like, your body transforms, and that's part of it. You know, I wouldn't like, yeah, like I was laughing looking at a picture of myself, my stomach pre-kids. I'm like, oh, that's what it looked like, you know, but I don't wish that back, because I wouldn't have these children. So, yeah, I don't know.
It's making me cry.
Oh, really?
Like, yes,
Yeah.
that heart-opened reverence. Oh, I wish women could feel that in their bodies, because it is just like...
But I'm sure, you know, like, unless you've got massive body challenges or hang-ups, I'm sure any woman who has had any level of challenge, falling pregnant or having children, wouldn't change, you know, wouldn't want to reverse wouldn't want to change what their body was like, or wouldn't want to go back to how it was, because
that would mean giving up what's created there.
Yeah, you know, and I mean, yeah, sure, you can always wish away things, but as we know, you know, you change one thing. This is a classic case with plastic surgery and any kind of, you know, cosmetic work. You change one thing and it immediately reveals the next thing you have to fix. So I believe so firmly it's an inside job. Like, it's totally you doing the inner healing, and then you don't, those things don't matter as much anymore, because, you know, you're not subordinating to some ideal of how you think you're supposed to be. You're just owning all of who you are. So, yeah.
So when you're hearing this beautiful listener saying she feels so connected to her body in pregnancy, and within the hours of birth and new motherhood, she's felt completely out of her body and disconnected. How do you sit with that, having just gone through that?
Yeah, it's big. It's really big. And I think part of it comes from, I mean, there's so many parts to it, because it's also about what you can do on yourself and honouring your body and pushing past that sense of disconnection to then create the reconnection, and also what you can do in your relationship at the same time. Because when you see them having reverence for you and your experiences and your body now, it helps you to find that again. And, you know, it's a little bit of a dance, because they can't love you more than you're willing to love yourself. They can't lift you up more than you're willing to lift yourself up. They can't put you down more than you're willing to put yourself down. So it is the work that you have to do on yourself, but certainly doing what you can, even in those intense weeks of parenting a newborn, to keep those connections with your partner, and to keep...
How do you do that?
Lots and lots of, you know, showing appreciation. Like a lot, you know, and it's not physical yet, like I'm just not in that space, but, you know, it's the cuddles, it's the kisses, it's the, you know, oh my God, my husband was seriously like a god in her birth. So I still talk to him about that and how grateful I am for that and how much he stepped up in that. And that totally, like, helps me stay really deeply attracted to him too, because of how much he was able to bring of himself in that experience. You know, and I wonder if, you know, this woman's talking about having a great birth, you know, how can she, you know, look beyond just herself in that birth, and how her team helped her and how her partner helped her, and, you know, start to kind of rekindle the intimacy, even simply just from feeling grateful for that their partner's sacrificed or given to, you know, because that, you know, as we know, like, as women, we want them to be providers and we want them to step up, but so often it's us getting in the way of that. So it's sort of stepping back and saying, okay, well, how are they providing in their way that's benefiting me, and how can I be grateful for that? And that would just start to transform that dynamic, which might, sometimes get a bit snappy, and get a little bit disconnected, because, a lot of men feel very useless, in the early days, because, they don't have boobs, right? Like, they can't do much with a newborn except rock them and pat them and until they squawk and want their mum, And so I think it's a lot about showing them ways that they can be a part of it, and showing a lot of gratitude for how they are able to help, as opposed to, getting cross when you feel like they're not stepping up, because that's going to make them retreat even more and not feel like they're doing any good. My husband was saying to me the other day, gosh, I'm just so grateful that I can cook, because I would feel dead set, like useless, like a deadbeat, because there's nothing else I can do. All I can do really is feed you to feed her and clean the house, and you have to do everything else, And I thought, wow, like, I love that he recognised that, but I also really felt for, so many men who almost probably want to contribute and want to know how they can help, but don't really have the means or don't have the way. So I think it's, the rekindling the intimacy and being in your body is also the work that you do with your partner in that stage.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that.
And I mean, what about in your experience working with, you've, attended so many births and helped so many women pre and postnatally. What's your experience of helping women to reconnect physically?
There's a few points that you said that I was like, yes. One of those points was to push past the initial discomfort and the initial feeling of disconnection to obtain connection with your own body.
Yeah.
Because often the sense, we're never totally disconnected and we're never totally connected. Right? We're actually a combination of both in every minute, always.
Yes.
So the point is to love where you're at right now, right? So that comes in the form of, okay, I'm feeling disconnected from my body. What does that mean? How do I feel, and what do I need to come back to connection? Asking yourself, what do I need right now to come back into connection with my body? Because you will be connected to your body in other ways.
Yeah, you will be. And it might be like the feeling of, when you're breastfeeding, the letdown, or the feeling of your baby attaching, and like, that might not be sensual as such, but it's also a way that you can definitely find reverence for your body and what it's capable of. So it's just looking for the new form, I suppose, in terms of how you can find that connection.
So I think that's it. Is the first step is to recognize and love what is. So love the form that your connection comes in right now, and love the form of your disconnection right now, because your disconnection, no different to any other body messenger, is just a message for, I would like you to pay attention to something here and bring it in for me. From a soul purpose, right? So your disconnection is just a way of your body speaking to you in a really uncomfortable way, because you've missed the whisperings previous to that. And when you start to pay attention to why it's there and what its message is, and then you actually act on that message, bam, connection's there. But we often stop at the disconnection because we have this whole background story from our childhood, I would say, around how the masculine has not shown up. So how many women right now, I was listening to, which I put on the Pleasure Nutritionist page, the John Wineland talk, who's genius.
He is just like,
oh my God. I love him, I could eat him up. But this whole concept of modern woman doesn't need man the way that she used to, for survival, for food, for, just for surviving financially. We don't need men the way we used to. So we're also stepping up in this world in a more masculine way. And so in the which is gorgeous, right? Because we have these incredibly profound and powerful women and business women and women doing amazing, amazing things. But we have lost the art of this subtlety of the feminine in that, the ability to run a business and a household and then slip into surrender. So we tend to take the story from our childhood, which we are the children really of a largely absent father, right? The 70s, 80s and 90s have really resulted in huge amounts of workforce, the largest rates of separation and divorce because of the whole culture around that. And so we have these deep, deep wounds of the masculine not showing up, not being there, not being trusted, not, you know, so we grow up as these women going, well, no good men exist. That man doesn't exist anywhere. There's no man that can do that stuff. The masculine is constantly disappointing me and not showing up, and he's not seducing me, and he's not surrendering me, and he's not desirable, and he's not da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
And it goes on, you know.
And that story goes on, and each of us have our own kind of hard wiring of that, which we so unconsciously bring into the present as a story from our past, but we haven't quite made the connection that it is a past-run story, and we're asking our partners, we're asking unconsciously our partners to fill our childhood voids. That's never going to go so well.
And, you know, when we say that, you know, you're running a story, it's really that you are looking for experiences in the present to confirm your perceptions of the past.
Or to fill those voids. So Dad wasn't there. Dad wasn't trustworthy. He came and he went. He kind of just wasn't around. Maybe he snapped at you when he was. So we've lost this sense of trust in the beauty of the mountain of the masculine, right? And in being able to flow into that. So there is an art form that we've lost between being in our masculine and being the mountain and then wanting a mountain, right? You can't have two of the same thing because one's not needed in that family dynamic. So if you want the mountain in your life, you need to be the river. Right?
So you need to soften.
And there's
surrender.
a ritual around getting there because I totally get to be running a business, killing it out there in a masculine way. You can't just bang, switch into the feminine. No different to, you can't be giving so much in your day as a mother and then bang, turn on the seductress.
Yeah.
There's what's the word? There's a toolkit that's unique to each of us in morphing between the two. And we've got to let go of this story that to do that we have to do it for our partners because our partners want more sex or whatever the story is that we're running, and we have to do it for them. We've got to kind of let go of that because that's mistrusting the masculine. And the thing with the feminine is we talk about magnetism, but what it is a power to evoke feeling in another person. So when you're sitting in your feminine and you're feeling that, he is evoked into noticing that. He's hardwired for it on every level, on a sensual, you know, smell, sight, touch, taste. He magnified by it. So the minute you slip into that, the minute he goes, I see that and I want it, because this is the other essence of the feminine, right? That we are, and historically through Taoist philosophy and Tantric philosophy, the uterus or the womb space is literally the point of divine connection. It is literally the source of energetic creation from divine energy. The masculine doesn't have a womb space, so they don't have a direct tap-in source to divine feminine creative energy. So historically through both of those philosophies, this is the whole thing around pleasure and entering the feminine, and because men get an energetic nourishment or exchange from the feminine in this. So the feminine being in the feminine feeds the masculine. It's literally like a food, a nourishment source for the masculine. So when the masculine sees, it's almost like, you know, a shark hinting blood in water, right? The minute the masculine senses a bit of that feminine, it's like hardwired to, whoosh,
it's on it.
I want that. So we have to ask ourselves if we're wanting, which largely I think women are, we're wanting to feel desired and taken and enraptured. But the masculine is evoked into that when we call it in from the feminine.
And the path to that is a path of surrender and vulnerability.
Yes.
You know, and it's of questioning your story and loosening your attachments to needing to control and needing them to be a certain way. It's allowing them to be that masculine in their way and softening
But there's an art form to that, right? So when we're talking about women that I see that feel so disconnected from their body, there's a background story to that. So I would ask you to look at where that's come from and the lack of trust in surrender and vulnerability in the masculine, because that will be a childhood story. 2, to getting gratitude for the form it's in right now. So 1, gratitude for where you are connected, how you do feel your body in different ways, how you notice how it's feeling and what it's thinking and doing. And 2, getting gratitude for the fact that you have uncomfortable feelings there, because they're there to pull you back into alignment. They're there as your friends. They're not there to show you all the ways you don't measure up or all the things that are wrong with your life. That's an outward projection based on the stories of childhood wounds. Those messengers are there to evoke you back in, right? To call you back in to the nourishment you need, to call in the nourishment the masculine needs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that.
So when we're talking about how do I get back into my connection with my body, it's about also seeing that pleasure is not separate to you. Pleasure is not another thing to add to your list in a day, that pleasure and sensuality is you. So it is starting to see, and this is my whole tagline on the Pleasure Nutritionist, that motherhood can be a luscious love affair, because it can be, right? We can have a love affair with our bodies, we can have a love affair with our lovers, we can have a love affair with our babies and our children, because pleasure expands pleasure. And when you bring intention, no different to pregnancy, right? When you are forced to bring intention and energy, guess what flows there? Intention and energy and consciousness. So when we start to notice our discomfort, recognize the message it has, and start to act on that consciously, guess what expands? Connection and sensuality, because we are bringing energy and intention to that very area of our lives, rather than thinking, 1, we don't have it, 2, there's no pathway to it, or 3, it's just another thing we have to do.
And it's, really about resisting that idea that, when I can get the kids in care, I can do X, or when this happens, I can then create space for me. Because what you're really saying here is it something that you can tap into in any moment. It's simply transforming your perception around something and, developing your toolkit to bring that connection back.
Yes. Mostly what I would say to our beautiful tribe is that the answer, and I say this as much for myself, given the day I had yesterday, is slowness. You want one thing to bring in your feminine and your capacity to surrender and awaken connection. Slowness. Slow down. Slow down the pace of life. Slow down your to-do list in a day. Slow down your speech. Slow down the tone of your voice. Slow down your reactions. This is what literally gives you the gateway, and this is literally what the masculine is evoked into. So you want one ticket? Ladies, it's slowness. If I have had a day like yesterday where it just is crazy and my to-do list was insane and I feel out of control, I get to the end of that day and I make a ritual. Literally, I create a ritual. And that will either be a set of steps to get me back into feeling heart opened, which for me might be listening. That's why I listened to John Wineland's talk. That was part of my pathway to start opening up my heart space, because I had felt so closed and organised and in control that it was deeply uncomfortable for me. And I feel shut down from my loved ones when I do that. So I look for things, so often for me it's an inspiring talk or a heart-opened nourishment of some sort, and then that will flow into, maybe it's a glass of wine, maybe it's a shower, maybe it's a rub of oils. Or recently what I've done when we talk about with our partners is to actually bring my husband into that. So I literally say to him, I would really love you to X, Y, and Z. Now at the moment for me, that's, I want you to set up our bedroom with candles and music and oil, and I want you to give me a massage here, and then I just want to see what happens. So by doing that, I allow myself to completely surrender and receive without the pressure of performance, because I think we don't often allow ourselves the capacity to do that. And if we're always the mountain, the masculine's not used to being evoked into that. So if you're looking for a pathway to get to that juicy spot, then there's probably steps to get there, right? And it's amazing how we don't, deeply nourished, amazing sex life is not the amount of positions and the wildness that's out there. It is totally about getting into that luscious state, because that energy of connection and longing and that energy, that is what is moving for men and women. That is the stuff that creates enormous awakening. And what I love from, John Wineland, which I'm on his bandwagon at the moment, as you can tell, is he talks about, men seem hardwired to not be monogamous. And there's a small part of the brain that's wired to that, but actually what men crave is a variety of energies. So when we're talking about it, and I totally get that, right? Because men are so dense in their nature, right? We talk about women operating on several different, there's one scenario, right? And how many times have you ladies heard this, and you've said something and you've waited and your husband's gone, righto, and off he's gone one way, and you're looking at him going, are you kidding me? Did you not notice X, Y, and Z? And I thought this was going on, and I thought this was clear, and I thought da-da-da-da-da. And he's just taken the face value of whatever's happened. And we've registered this whole other level of interactions on so many other planes and levels that, they have absolutely no idea it even exists. And this really speaks to the masculine's density in their emotional, physical, nervous system capacity to receive and transmit.
And he says it so beautifully, where he just really kind of says that, we're simple. We are simple.
Because of the density.
Yeah.
What registers for us as an 11 will register for them for a 5. Because they're dense. There's so much more, density and energetic density to get through for them to register a nervous system response. Whereas in the feminine, we're so much lighter, and our perceptions are so much more subtle that we register all of these things. So men require or crave nourishment from the feminine in terms of energy, but they require a spectrum of energy too. So they want your heart to be open, and they want to be able to be loved by the mother in you, and they want to be able to overpower and seduce the maiden in you, and they want to be overpowered by, as he says it, the cock-loving whore. Yeah. Right? It's this spectrum of energy that he doesn't need to look anywhere else when you are all of those things, which we talk about in so many ways. That's the point of story. That's the point of archetype. That's the point in connecting to your feminine and your sexuality, right, is to tap in to all of these different polarities that exist within you because of your ability to have range within energy that the masculine seeks in you.
I love that.
I seriously, I was thinking, Bridget, we should run a workshop on this for a day, because we could just talk about this till the cows come home. Yeah. So this whole concept of, feeling disconnected in your body is just a messenger to call you back into what you're currently not giving yourself. You don't need your husband, your partner, your lover to give it to you. What you need is to get yourself to that juicy spot, and guess what? They'll show up. The other part I loved about what you said, Bridget, was the affirmation of our partners, is that they respond really well to positive training.
Which is what John Wineland said too. We're like a bit like dogs. We really respond to training.
To praise what you love. But it can't be like a subtle nod. No. Because men are too dense to register that. Yeah. It has to be spoken from the point of, here's what I love, and here's the effect it has on me. No different to in the Queen's Code when we're talking about how we are communicating with men, and when we want them to do something for us, we tell them what we want them to do and why, what effect does it have on us? What does it produce within us? It's the same thing when we're talking about intimacy, love, sex, or connection with our husbands. What is the thing they did? And what effect did it have on you and in you? Because that will open up their heart space and they will want to do that more. But you can't just go, you know, that thing you did was good. It really has to be, you know, when you did this, it made me da-da-da-da-da.
It's really about how, your delivery of that. So actually,
you have to deliver an 11
for
them to kind of register a 7 or an 8 and want to do it again.
And a great way to understand the best way, you know, how they would like to be spoken to is to see how they speak to your children when they're really impressed with something that your children do, or to see how when they're giving to you in some way or providing to you, how they do that, because that will be how they want to be communicated to in return.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, is how they, and I totally notice it with I was just thinking about how my husband is with my son, and he's often overtly like reinforcing what he thinks was really great that, you know, Hugo worked at or achieved or something, which to me is him speaking to me and telling me that that's how he'd like me to acknowledge what he does. So it's another little way that you can start to observe how they might like to be communicated, to see how they do that with other loved ones.
Which is also an act of gratitude and appreciation. So when we're talking about, you know, what we have gratitude for expands, same as with our bodies. What we have gratitude for in our partners expands. So pushing past those initial stories and beliefs that say you can't trust the masculine, you can't be that vulnerable, he doesn't deserve it, all of those bullshit stories, I'm sorry, they are. To get to the point where you are willing to put your heart out there in such a way that it could be broken. I don't want a love that's not going to break my heart. What the fuck is the point?
Yeah. But you'll notice, though, that often it's that vulnerability, it's that sense of not feeling like you're willing to go there that's what keeps you from crossing that threshold to fully opening your heart to that. Because, you know, as we know, like when you open your heart, you're more vulnerable to having it broken, but that's living, though. That's
feel that. They feel that, you know? So to offer appreciation and gratitude even when you don't feel like giving it is such an act of courage and warrior woman and deep-seated lover, willing to see the magnificence in your partner even when they're undeserving of it. Or in your mind that they are.
In your mind,
Will call that out in them and they will want to show up for you in that. They will want to be your hero when you see their hero.
Yeah.
If you never acknowledge their hero doesn't want to come out and play.
It's not safe for them. You know, they don't feel safe to express that.
No. And men, as we know from the Queen's Code and from John Wineland and he's the guy that wrote Way of the Superior Man.
Oh, David Data.
David Data. They all talk about men being hardwired with heroism.
Yeah.
They are hardwired to be a hero. But in this day and age, the hero is not needed unless we create the space for it to show up. And this comes back to that dance and that interplay you were talking about, Bridget, when we're talking about the subtlety of relationship dynamics, which I love. So maybe we need to, now we've kind of done that big spiel on how we see connection, is to just bring it full circle back to our beautiful listeners' points A, B, and C. So maybe I should read it again because I'm wondering if I'm forgetting what it was, but point A,
let's go back to it,
was around disconnection, wasn't it? Hang on. Okay, I'm gonna have to.
I think if you know where you're feeling disconnected to your body, it's about asking yourself, okay, well, where am I connected? Because you are both connected and disconnected, as we touched on. So potentially you're looking for the connection in the same form that it was when you were pregnant. But it will be transforming. It'll be just different now. And so where is that?
And you want it to be different.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, I think it was you I had this conversation with, I'm pretty sure it was, wasn't it? Is you've stepped up and into the mother archetype. You are headed up and beyond into the crone archetype. You're not going back to the maiden.
No, yeah.
And nor do you want to, but this scrambling to find who you are is part of that deep soul work to work out who this woman is.
Yes, yes. Who is this?
Not who that beautiful, pretty little girl was. Who this woman is and how she shows up in this world and how she mothers and fiercely moves her energy around her community. So point A was on the other side of birth, feeling like my body no longer belongs solely to me. This is a big one of the mother archetype, and this is when we're talking about when the mother archetype is out of balance. That balance between giving from the point of pleasure and giving resourcelessly is very different.
Yes.
So this was, I mean, we've talked about this concept in so many podcasts that it is deeply challenging, but this is your next evolution as a woman. This is the moving from the maiden to the mother, is that energy from being just mine now is mine and how big you are willing to grow is how large that energy expands, because we all know we can mother just ourselves, we can mother ourselves in a partner, we can mother ourselves in a family, we can mother ourselves in a business, we can mother ourselves in a community. How wide does that energy spread is the ability to which you're willing to step up and into that power, right?
Yes.
So this concept of mourning the loss that your body is no longer just yours is only keeping you stuck where you are.
Yes, absolutely.
Because your body is still yours, but you are now being called into a deeper, harder level of ownership of what that means.
And this speaks to evolution generally, that whenever we kind of climb a quantum, we're raising, we're rising in our sphere of awareness and influence. And so what that means from an energetic point of view is that it doesn't mean that to give to your child, you have to take away from yourself. It's about how you learn and integrate and practice the tools that mean that you can give to yourself and your child. They don't have to be mutually exclusive.
No.
And, and if your resistance is, oh no, but my child needs me, like if it's a kind of martyrdom, then it's looking at what are the benefits to my child of me putting my mask on first, of me giving to myself first.
Or to my husband if he has to take over.
Yeah, or to him, because you will see that there are huge benefits, because you can't tell your child to stand up for themselves and own their body and be authentic and, all of those kinds of things if you're not willing to do it.
It calls you into your boundaries. It calls you into self-care in such a ferocious way that you've probably never had to own it before because you've never been at the point of being so tapped out. Pre-kids, we kind of go, oh my gosh, I have no time, but you never really realise how much time you have until you have kids, right?
Yeah, totally.
And you look back and go, are you kidding me? Like the whole day was about me. So it's this whole nother way of looking for the morphing form of what that is. So the pleasure, the sensuality within your day can be from the act of making and drinking a cup of tea to enjoying the beauty and that kind of love, heart open space cuteness of your kids to making and creating space, ritual and time to come back into your body, which both you and I do as a ritual, knowing that when we're feeling disconnected, it's a call to bring us back into honouring more of that, because it's from that space that it's effortless.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, B, I don't recognise my body anymore. Yes, our bodies shift and change.
And there can be a real mourning with that.
There can be a sense of loss, particularly if you've really identified with your body being you.
Yeah.
That you are validated by how gorgeous your body was. That if you no longer have that form of external validation, it can feel like you've really lost who you are in a really immense way. But like we both talked about, it's finding the beliefs that are sitting behind it and reframing, finding the reverence, creating the sensuality into the body and the daily routines that bring back the gratitude and the reverence for where your body is at now and what it has gifted you in that process. And recognizing that you are not less beautiful, you are not less sexy. It's just calling you into a deeper, broader spectrum of what that is, rather than it being just because I put on something cute.
Yeah. And I mean, what that can reveal to you is how much you define yourself by external parameters or praise or judgment. You know, which is really what you're talking to.
It is, and that in itself is what we use our whole, like you and I talk about all the time, our whole reframe and belief, shattering those beliefs so you can step more fully into yourself. Is all of that. And C, really confused as to how I went from feeling so connected to disconnected. And I hope that we've touched on that in terms of building a fantasy and illusion, in terms of a connection and belief on what the feminine is, and how you either step into an embodiment of that or somehow you've lost that, when in essence you are it.
Yes.
And it's just about seeing what gets in your way from connecting to that truth, because you can easily let go of that stuff when you're, as we said, captivated in it in pregnancy.
Yeah.
But when you're but having even witnessed the height of that keeps you striving back for it, right?
Yeah.
So it totally serves, because you've kind of felt it and you want to get back there.
But the challenge is you're tripping yourself up because you're looking for it in the same form. Whereas now it's okay, well, how has it changed, and how can I access and grow into it in the form it is now?
That's
rather than
exactly
trying to make it the way that it was, which you can't go back to.
No. So it's about really having, a complete reverence and gratitude for the fact that you got to experience that, because I wonder previous to that if you would ever really have an insight. And that is just like scratching the surface, let me tell you, of the feminine. You think that was an extraordinary awakening and opening experience for you. What you are capable of now, moving in and through the mother archetype, it is like a drop in the ocean to what is there for you. But what it also calls you into, that loss, keeps you seeking, right? It keeps you wanting to scratch back what that is that's holding you back. And that is where the fucking gold is.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
That is what you and I love. That is the stuff that blows open your world when you realize you are not without it, that it is there, and it's all the layers of stuff that say you can't or you're not, or that get in the way from connecting with that truth. That is where your growth is at.
Yeah.
And when you move through that pleasure and sensuality awakens for you. And I so hope we've inspired you to go on that journey for yourself, because it's constantly evolving, right? You never kind of reach this point where you're just connected to it.
No, and it's we don't want to put that idea in your head that that's the destination either. It's this constant peeling back of layers, this constant unraveling to your own truth, which is just beautiful, uncomfortable, perfect, like earth-shattering, and that's what living aligned and fulfilled in life looks like.
Yeah.
It's kind of tackling that stuff and looking for the wisdom, looking for the gold, not settling for feeling a certain way, asking yourselves deeper questions to get to that.
So we would love for you to connect with us on nourishingthemother.com.au or on Facebook, Nourishing the Mother. If you have questions, insights, something you would love for us to unravel a little bit deeper, we certainly love that guidance from you, so that we can go where you're really wanting us to go to. We are at the Wellness Summit in Melbourne here on September 10 and 11 with our Nourish Your Woman stall, filled with amazingness to just adorn the goddess that you are physically, as much as to sit in your home in pleasure and take in that beauty, which fuels when we talk about nourishment for the feminine, beauty is it.
Yeah.
And it comes in so many forms. So if you are at the Wellness Summit, we would love for you to come and say hi to us at that stand. If you would like to come to the Wellness Summit, 2 days of wellness talks, you can jump on the Wellness Summit and purchase tickets at a special price with our Mother Summit 16 code, which gets you $100 off those tickets, which is fantastic.
Yes.
And to connect with you, Bridget.
Yeah, suburbansandcastles.com, and you, Jules.
thepleasurenutritionist.com. And we'll see you next week with Sylvie when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.